high quality holistic health study of that individual should be done before they even think about doing this kind of dentistry. But does that happen? It happens in 0.1% of dental practices to 0.1% of population, because they're the ones that are switched on. The majority are clueless. That's why we're on the airwaves, sir.
Yeah, this is why you have to look at everything holistically first. Do you find that some of these things like composite bonding and things, can that upset the oral microbiome as well?
That's a really good question. Really good question. There are ingredients that can do that for sure. So people in the past, especially the old-fashioned.
Episode 38, and we're joined again by our favourite dentist, Mark Mortyboys. In this interview, this is the second part of the series. We discuss cosmetic dentistry, the dangers, the things to avoid, what you should look at in terms of a good dentist as well, different countries that should be avoided and maybe other countries that could be considered as safe. We look at the chemicals in each of the different options, things that maybe aren't as negative as, you know, some holistic health people out there would say, and some that are pretty dangerous and we should look at avoiding as well. I feel this is a very balanced conversation, which does actually offer, in my opinion, a lot of positives, as well as explaining the dangers of these cosmetic choices. So, yeah, a lot of value, I thought, as well. It's probably kind of convinced me that these procedures aren't as bad as I once thought. I'm always trying to sort of keep things as natural as possible, but I do appreciate that maybe there comes a point of no return and you're running out of options. So sometimes going down a cosmetic route is the best thing you can do. But what Mark also offers in this conversation, and I highly recommend you stay to the end, because we really get into the nitty gritty towards the end. I feel there's a lot of value there. But what he is talking about as well is ways that you can actually improve your smile without getting the cosmetic side of things done. So there's a lot of tricks that I didn't really consider myself. So a lot of value there, could save you a lot of money. I know it's becoming very popular, but maybe it's the right way to go, maybe it isn't. But with listening to this interview, hopefully you'll be very, very well informed to make that decision for yourself. What I would also ask, if possible, is to please like and share if you like this interview. And also, please subscribe. I've noticed that viewings have actually dropped off on YouTube recently, but they're increasing quite significant actually on the podcast platform. So I'm not really sure why, but yeah, the more sort of subs we get, the more likes and shares, you know, the more people we can reach with the message. And I genuinely think that this is a very, very good one, very positive and very, very helpful. Hopefully, if anyone you know is looking to get any type of cosmetic surgery, veneers, composite bonding, whatever it is, hopefully they can have a look at this. This can be really good source material to give them a balanced view on the subject and to help them make an informed decision. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy the show.
To do the second part of the series, I mean, in dentistry, you can look at a few factors. You've got the health and the beauty industry. We've covered a lot of the health, the natural health side of things, how to prevent kind of any like damage or loss of a tooth. But now we're going to focus more on the kind of beauty side. So let's say if you're in a situation where you feel you have no choice but to get something like an implant or a veneer or composite bonding or whatnot, or even if you're just not so happy with your smile and you want to look at what your options are, maybe positive and negative outcomes, and trying to keep things as holistically minded as possible. So I know Mark's raring to go on this one, so welcome in again, Mark. Let's go.
Yeah, really excited to be here again, and I do feel for all our audience this is going to be a really important podcast, and especially for the younger crowd that have got pretty much what I like to call virgin teeth or untouched teeth or minimally touched teeth. So I wanted to cover whole range of journeys and potential journeys, but especially for the people who've never really had any dentistry. And then also we can bring in, like we did in the previous podcast, people who've got bruised and battered teeth with root canals and missing teeth, etc. But we're going to start fundamentally, and most of the podcast will be on the younger crowd, or even the mid-range crowd, or even the older crowd who are blessed to still have untouched teeth. Because what do we do if we're feeling like we want to just smarten up our teeth or smarten up our smile? And that's really what I want to focus on today. And I want to sort of bring in two aspects of that, because there's a facial aspect and then there's a dental aspect. So I think ultimately we've got to look at ourselves either with a professional or with a family member or a loved one that can kind of be really honest and say, is this a dental problem or is this a facial problem? And when I say problem, concern or wish to be in a different way, and then get the guidance on whether this is, for example, a facial architecture issue, like a lip that's too short, like an upper lip. So when you are relaxed, your lips don't touch and show your teeth a lot. If you're lucky with beautiful teeth, that's amazing, but you may be unlucky and end up showing a lot of gum at the same time. So we call that a gummy smile. So that's one aspect. So it's not just about teeth, it's also about the facial architecture. And then I mentioned earlier on the bone architecture. That's really classic orthodontics, or what I'd even go further to say is orthopedics, which is bone and orthodontics. So it's kind of like orthodent is teeth and orthopedics is bone. And often orthodontic treatment is an orthopedic treatment as well, like mandibles or lower jaws are brought forwards in kind of what I'd call the chinless wonder look, or where the jaw is very retro or retrognathic. And if it's the opposite, which is kind of more what I have, and I've had treatment to bring my upper jaw more forwards without surgery. And all I'm going to mention today is non-surgical techniques. If someone has a severe concern and they feel like they need an orthopedic surgery, then that's another podcast. And really, I'll just say maybe then they should get their dentist to get a referral to an orthomaxillofacial surgeon. So they're surgeons who just devote their lives to redesigning faces and heads and skulls after accidents, but they also do the cosmetic side if someone feels they've got an unsightly jaw profile. A lot of it can be done with non-surgical techniques, or a compromise can be achieved with non-surgical techniques, and we can talk about that today as well. So it's about health and beauty. We talked about the health side, and with the beauty aspect we're going to discuss today, what's really important and close to my heart is that we get the joys of cosmetic dentistry and not the pitfalls and the perils of that kind of work. And there's two celebrities that a lot of dentists will kind of mention when they're talking about what they can do for people. There's a negative role model, bless her, very well-known femme fatale called Katie Price. And then there's a kind of a good-looking, or perceived to be good-looking, actor called Tom Cruise. And if you look at his before early childhood type photographs, you'll see his interesting smile, and then you'll see his modern smile. And with Katie Price in particular, most people have seen the shock horror photographs of her with her dentistry off, and then those really jagged triangular teeth that a lot of people are now terming, maybe unfairly, but it's got a label. And I haven't personally been to this country, so I can't really be positive or negative about the term turkey teeth, but there's enough negative slander about that kind of dentistry that there must be some smoke with the fire. There's always smoke with fire, as we know. So there must be some truth in that. And it may not be just Turkey. I think it's a bit unfair that it's just Turkey that's getting this, because I've seen this kind of dentistry not really in the UK, thankfully, and that's why I'm going to support UK dentistry. Like we support British farmers, I'm going to support British dentists. We may be perceived to be one of the most expensive dental countries in the world, but there's a reason for it. Apart from the economic situation of our country, there's a reason we have such high standard dentists who have very high morals and high ethics, and we are governed by a very strict governing body that would not allow us to do the style of dentistry that we're seeing called turkey teeth. We would actually be sued. Most of us would be sued and struck off for that kind of dentistry. So that's why I'm a bit perplexed that it's going on. And there are governing bodies trying to sort of arrest this kind of dentistry, because it's very archaic. and it has a huge disruptive element that we talked about in the previous podcast.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we've even seen the brunt of it yet, because it's still quite new. So I'd imagine in like the next sort of 10 years, we're going to see just how bad, some of these cases can be.
well, we're already seeing it in the UK, and this is another word of warning. If you're feeling, well, I can only go to Turkey or one of these countries because it's so much cheaper. I can get all my teeth done for $5,000 instead of, just maybe half a mouth for $5,000. When people start comparing prices, a bit like a menu in a restaurant, my first advice would be, let's look at one, do you really need any kind of treatment? Why do you feel you need this treatment? Have a quality smile investigation with a dentist or a dental team that really understand aesthetics or smile aesthetics. These are dentists highly trained in cosmetic dentistry, and they will use photography and smile software called digital design software, digital smile design. So you can get an understanding of what you can have before you even start the treatment, and have discussions with people in a very grounded way to help you before you jump in and make decisions. And then there's also opportunities after that where you can have a product put on your teeth as an intermediate, what we call a mock-up. So it's all reversible, it's all just glued on, a bit like if you were wanting to change your hairstyle or your hair color, you'd go to a trichologist or just a good old hairdresser and just say, look, I've got short black hair at the moment. I'd love to know what I look like with long silver hair. Let's put a wig on. So we call these dental wigs or dental mock-ups. So there's an opportunity to do that. Yes, there's a bit of time. Yes, there's going to be a fee attached to that. But at least then you're going forwards, if you want to, with true knowledge, and not only knowledge for yourself. You can then show that dentistry, that mock-up dentistry, that wig-like dentistry to your friends and family. Is it the right color? Is it the right length? Is it the right shape? Does it suit your face, etc., etc.? Are you just doing dentistry when maybe you should be looking at the face as well? And that's where we're going to look at, and we're going to discuss the orthodontic options, because the gold standard of cosmetic dentistry has always been and always will be orthodontics. And that is moving teeth into alignment. And if your jaws are not in the best position, if we are young enough or we're lucky enough to have a mild jaw situation, we can move the jaws into the right position without the surgery. And if it's in a more significant position and you really want the jaws in a better place or a different place, then we're going to have to consider the surgical aspects of the jaw before even touching the teeth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people really know how important jaw alignment is. There's been people that have like chronic migraines for years and years, and then they realize that they've got a jaw that's slightly out or an overbite or whatever it may be. Things like even vertigo, because I was getting vertigo, and I kind of went down this rabbit
Absolutely,
hole with the bite, certain tension, even like backaches, the jaw can like misalign the whole body. I don't think people really kind of know the consequence of a jaw and I think it's quite unspoken by the dentist as well. Maybe this is an educational thing. Maybe the dentist, because they'll look into these things, but maybe they don't really talk about it and educate the public on just how important it is. I don't mean people like you. I just mean like your average dentist who just wants to do your checkup and get you out of the chair kind of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's this kind of dentistry. It's got a term in the US, the United States, because they love chiropractic. We tend to like osteopaths if we want kind of muscle and bone adjustments, but chiropractic is growing in the UK, and they call it chirodontics, where there's a spinal assessment, a whole body postural assessment, combined with the dentistry, and then it's looked upon whether it's an ascending problem, whether it's coming up from the feet. So that's when podiatry becomes very popular, where some people have devices put in their shoes, or they have leg length correctional work through chiropractic to get their hips back into balance, or it's a descending one where it's coming down from the jaw and the bite. And there have been some horrendous studies where if people just put into Google rat studies or rat spine studies, by changing the bite. So they put little bits of white filling material on molars of rats, and within seconds, if not minutes, you see scoliosis or curves in the spine of the rat. So it's actually becoming very well known, this aspect of dentistry. But I'm 40 odd years into my career, include my training. It's 42 years, but without my training, about 37 years. And it was only really about 10 years into my career that I met an American dentist and with orthodontic kind of background that came over from the US and trained a lot of us pretty much 30 years ago. He passed away only a couple of weeks ago, bless him. And I've been over to America to his kind of clinic and home. And I was one of the lucky ones where I got to stand on the shoulder of an amazing giant in this field. So I can speak quite significantly on this subject. But I don't feel that's really for the audience enough today, other than just to say could be a huge element to, one, your health. If you've got, like you say, the vertigo kind of problems, or you're clenching and you're grinding your teeth, cracking your teeth. Have you got migraines and headaches? Have you got jaw clicking and jaw pain when you yawn? Does your jaw lock, for example, or does it dislocate when you yawn? There's a whole myriad of just dental and head and neck kind of concerns. And the huge one that's really rocking right now is this whole syndrome of sleep apnea, and people waking up more tired than when they went to sleep. They're having high blood pressure. They're overdeveloping their neck muscles because they really can't breathe very well. And a lot of that is down to jaw alignment or misalignment, and the pattern of breathing, whether we're breathing in through the nose and ideally out through the nose, but at least in through the nose. If you look around, you'll see a significant portion of society breathing constantly in through their mouth. And if they're breathing in through their mouth, they're not really going to be breathing out through their nose. And so they're breathing out through their mouth. So complete mouth breathing is a massive no-no for so many factors, health factors. And just from a general dentist point of view, we see people getting gum disease and tooth decay. And we keep saying, you got to have more fluoride. You got to brush your teeth and floss your teeth. When actually the true cause, it's not even the sugars. The true cause is the dry mouth syndrome from mouth breathing the whole time. If we keep drying off the magic fluid called saliva, that's our antibiotic in essence, then we're going to get into dental trouble just from mouth breathing.
Yeah.
So big subject, big subject.
Mouth taping for me, not to go on too long about this, but mouth taping was at night when I go to sleep was one of the best things I've ever done. It took me ages to get the wife into it. Months and months of trying to convince her. Every single night now when we go to sleep, we've got the tape, and sleep better, deeper sleep, better dreams. Like my dreams are like exotic. Sometimes I'm looking forward to going to sleep. I'm like, what are we going to dream about today? It's like HD dreams. Wake up feeling a lot more refreshed. The mouth thing, as you say, I wake up and your mouth's going to be a little bit dry. You haven't had a drink in about 8 hours, but I used to wake up with that dry mouth to the point of like my tongue's like stuck to the to my roof of my mouth or whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
It's been a game changer for me. So I definitely, I think I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now.
Okay, and interesting, but in our previous podcast, you did mention you had 3 or 4 cavities and you're worried about them growing, and then you've done a lot of nutritional and holistic medical kind of practices to control that tooth decay. But maybe all we need to do is just rely on our magical fluid called saliva, but we need to make sure it's flowing right and staying in our mouth right, not evaporating from mouth breathing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things that you'd hear and you think it can't be that simple, but when you start looking into how important the flow of saliva is, it really is a massive factor, and it's such an easy thing to do. We just use a little bit of tape. I have to tape my mouth a little bit more than maybe the average person, because my mouth does have a tendency to open when I'm asleep. So if I'm not, if I literally tape the whole thing shut. And the only time I haven't done it is when I've had like a cold, because I'm a bit worried.
It's when your nose is blocked, then you have to kind of use your mouth a bit.
Yeah, I actually learned, I'll just quickly say, a very good way to unblock the nose as well, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, breathe out through the nose, hold your nostrils, lift your head all the way up and all the way back down. Do that 3 times, and you'll find it'll probably clear your nose. If it doesn't, do it again. But if I ever go to bed with unless it's a stinking cold, then that's a different situation. But I can unblock it quite easy. So I've kind of learned little tricks along the way, which has made it a lot easier. But Yeah, honestly, it's a game changer. So I'm glad you you mentioned the mouth breathing.
Great. So bringing it all back now to cosmetics, because that's, I feel, why a lot of people are listening. Hopefully they're wanting to know all the health aspects as well. And what I want to focus on is the kind of choices that are available for enhancing our smile. And let's just focus initially on teeth. Then we can maybe go on to facial muscles and myofunctional work, and also the orthopedic stuff, which I've kind of already started on. So I may not need to mention much at the end. So what are our choices? We look at our teeth and go, not sure if this is what I want, kind of thing. And I think the simplest question to ask is it the right color? Let's start with color. And a big fashion that's been going around for quite a while now. And we could talk just a podcast on all the different ideas on tooth whitening, the safer methods and the more holistic methods. And I don't know if I really want to do that yet. I think I want to just rattle off, so we keep our audience interested in the kind of cosmetic stuff, and then maybe we can talk about the different ways to whiten later. But is the tooth color right? And if it is just a little bit off, just like you'd like a couple of shades whiter, maybe 5 shades whiter, that's the only issue, then tooth whitening every time. It should always start with tooth whitening if that's the only concern. You shouldn't really be thinking about doing any kind of irreversible dentistry on your teeth. Tooth whitening is pretty much irreversible. Frustratingly, colors do come back. So it's a bit like if you want to change your hair color, the roots will grow, and you know that you're going to have to redo your hair roots every 1, 3, 6 months, depending on how fast your hair grows. And with tooth whitening, it's not about growing. It's just that the yellower tones, if you've got yellow tones in your teeth, they will return. It's just the original color of your collagen or the dentin inside underneath your enamel. And for most people, that's the reason for tooth whitening. If you've got stains on the outside of your teeth from drinking and eating dark foods, tannin foods, red wines, teas and coffees, and even maybe habits like smoking cigarettes, cigars, etc., then they're extrinsic stains, and most of those stains can be easily controlled by either seeing a dental hygienist or getting a product that works for you. And there are products over the counter that can be quite abrasive that we don't recommend you use every day, but maybe once a week or a couple of times a week. And then there are kind of more dissolving type natural remedies. The most popular one is the inside skin of a banana, because it has these enzymes that can kind of work on the pellicle, or the kind of layer that's on our teeth that's absorbing the color. And believe it or not, rubbing strawberries into our teeth. Cut strawberry, that has to be that sort of inner juicy part of the strawberry, rubbing those over your teeth. So there are a couple of quick tips on natural ways. But if you just Google natural ways to whiten teeth, you'll get a whole myriad. There's even cool stuff on my website, thedentalshaman.com, where I write blogs on a regular basis, and that was one of my blogs. But to keep going on tooth whitening, there are in-house methods and there are take-home methods, and there are numerous ways of doing the take-home methods, and they're even quite funky ideas now with these kind of LED light products. So the red LED therapy has been seen to be very good for stimulating blood flow, like infrared. So that's been around a long time in sort of sports medicine. It's getting more popular now for gum management. So if you've got a gum disease, you're putting the red light on your gums to improve blood flow. But if you put blue light on your teeth, then the blue will kind of lighten the darker shades, shall we just say, of the dentin under the enamel. So blue light therapy is becoming very popular for tooth whitening. I kind of like that one because there's no chemicals. You're not really overworking peroxides on your teeth, which is one of the concerns in tooth whitening. Are we damaging our teeth long term? Could we even make our teeth more sensitive by whitening our teeth? And in the hands of ourself, can we be trusted? Especially if you have an emotional disorder, let's say like an OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Could you overdo it and maybe cause serious long-term damage, maybe even the death of a nerve by over peroxiding the dentin, and then the nerve tubules and the nerve fibers getting so irritated that they end up dying off and abscessing. So we don't see that very common. We see more tooth sensitivity, but there is certainly a number of people who are giving themselves a lot of grief with their teeth by over whitening, and certainly over brushing with these really abrasive tooth whitening type toothpastes. So everything comes with a bit of a caution, and that's kind of me as a general dentist, as a traditional dental trained dentist at Guy's Hospital. It's really for most of my life, if not the last 30 clinical years, really intensively gone down the rabbit hole of holistic dentistry and holistic medicine, and bringing that into dentistry so that we get the results we're looking for without too many side effects, ideally no side effects. But even like orthodontics does have potential for side effects, so we're going to talk about those in a moment. But the gold standard of getting a dental smile at optimum level, after we've looked at the color, because maybe all we need to do is just whiten the teeth, but if the gold standard is orthodontics, a really simple word for that, because a lot of people may not understand what that means. They understand what braces means, but orthodontics is a bit of a Latin word. So we like to make it really simple and just say align. Just align the teeth. So if you've got crooked teeth, some too far forward, some too far back, some overlapping each other, some form of alignment therapy would be the kind of gold standard. So we're not removing any enamel to get an aligned look. So we're aligning. When I say aligning, we're aligning through movement. We're not aligning through fake porcelain surgery, as we like to call it. Everyone's heard of the term plastic surgery, and we've called it for a long time porcelain surgery. If we're going to change the shape of teeth by removing enamel, that is porcelain surgery, or basically enamel surgery. Okay, so the gold standard is really to try and avoid that. The downside of that, as I'm sure everyone knows, is I want this done in a couple of weeks. I've got a wedding in 3 months' time. I don't want to wear any kind of alignment product for more than 6 months, for a year, 2 years. And the longer that time span goes, when you have a consultation, a lot of people do get disillusioned, say, well, do I really want to be in braces for 1 to 2 years when really I want the result now? So that's the first bit of feedback, is if you want speed, you will be making compromise. So can you balance your mentality? Can you balance your emotions and see common sense, as a lot of people call? Most dentists will say, why are people doing this? And the sad thing is there are market forces. If people are willing to pay for something, even if they have to go to another country, there'll be someone taking your money to do something quickly that might have quite significant downsides, certainly if not in the short term, but certainly in the long term. And if you're a 20 to 30-year-old and you're having kind of extreme enamel reduction, you've got to pray hard that that's going to last more than 10 years, more than 20 years. And if you're 20 and you're having it done, you're not even 40 by the time it's 20 years old. So what are the downsides? And the most obvious downside is replacement of whatever's been done. And we're seeing that a lot with color. People in their 20s, maybe 30s, had super white teeth put in, and they had a lot of enamel removed to get that result. And then they just want to tone it down a bit and go, not necessarily yellow, but just not so white. But the only way to get that result is to take off the old. And then the trauma of removing all that old dentistry, even when done skillfully, it all creates inflammation. Like every surgery creates inflammation. It's, can you recover from that inflammation? And teeth are well known to not really enjoy inflammation. And so the least you'll get is a bit of toothache. And if you're really unlucky, nerves can die. And then that means root canal treatments or taking teeth out just because you had some cosmetic dentistry 10, 20 years ago. And that's the kind of Katie Price story. If anyone just wants to just kind of go on Google or Wikipedia and just look at Katie Price's dental story, it's all there documented with photography. And it's so tragic, it's so horrific. And if you only saw that, you'd think, why are people doing it? Thankfully, there are some great dentists. There are many great dentists out there who are doing great porcelain dentistry, which we will cover later. But I'm going to try and put most people off porcelain dentistry initially, especially the younger crowd, the 20 to 40 crowd. You got a question, Jay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I went to get Invisalign.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had a tooth that broke when I was a kid, like young. I was really young, and I had to get it removed in the end. And I've ended up with a bit of a gap, like on the side of my smile.
Oh
So I
yeah.
went to speak to them, and I thought it'd be a really simple, you know, process. And they've sent me basically what I need to get done. And there was about seven or eight teeth that needed like point 0.2 to zero point 0.5 millimeters of enamel to be filed off.
Yeah.
And I've gone back and said, look, I don't want any enamel filed off. Like, what can we do? And then they've come back, and in the end, we've agreed not to move forward. And I'm thinking, like, I've got a tiny little gap, which is not really an issue at all. Most people don't even notice it. It's just I know it's there. And am I going to sacrifice, you know, what we're talking? We're talking probably a serious amount of enamel there. The dentist actually was like, look, it's not a problem. We do it all the time. And I'm like, look, I don't think I have the enamel to lose, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that's something, even with like Invisalign, I think you've got to be quite careful. And I know quite a few people that have had it done, and I've spoken to them about it, and they're like, oh, you're just overthinking, just get it done. I've had it done. I'm like, man, that's a lot of enamel which you can't get back, that you've just sacrificed for something
Yeah.
that's probably not even worth it in the end.
Well, thankfully, that is still a biological level of affordable enamel to lose, but no one really wants to lose it unless we have to, right? So you've got to decide: do you have to have what's called interproximal reduction, or IPR? And it's up to 0.5 of a mil, where there's a safe biological limit that we can afford to lose, in theory.
Yeah.
Because that rubbed surface, a bit like sandpaper, you know, we rub it down and then it remineralizes within 24 hours and re-protects itself. A bit like hair cutting, you know, when you trim hair, it kind of protects the ends will kind of seal over and protect themselves. That said, what's the right way of putting it? Because it's a bit unfair for me to comment on what you've heard, because I haven't seen your digital scans, I haven't seen what the Invisalign software is creating. But there is often a way to avoid what's called IPR, and you actually have to ask and design with that mentality. So it's a bit like being a builder, and you sort of think you're going into a building, saying, "Well, we're not going to knock any wall out here. We're going to do it all." So we just have to think differently and work harder. Usually, right? It's sometimes a lot easier just to bish and bash walls out, just to kind of create what you're looking for and what you're wanting. So by being a different mindset, you can usually work out a way of avoiding IPR. But if you can't, if they're really crossed over, overlapping, for example, then the only way forwards, and this is really a point that's very close to my heart, is it's called expansion, and where you kind of develop the jaw.
Yeah.
When I say the jaw, the actual arch form of the jaw. So your teeth sit in this kind of wall of bone that's a bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen anyone without their dentures, without their teeth. They have that gum. It's like a mound of bone covered in gum, and that's where the teeth used to sit. And for most people, that's quite a nice thick amount of bone that's very adaptable, especially in the upper jaw. It's quite moldable, but you have to wear special kind of products. And even Invisalign can potentially adapt by up to 2 millimeters each side. So this is why I'm surprised that you were told that it's mandatory that you have to have this 0.5 IPR. So I just can't comment enough, other than saying I would get a second opinion from a different clinician, or ideally a different practice, so there isn't any bias. And that's something I'm very, very, very strong on. If you don't hear what you want to hear, and then find out if that's the same story from another clinician in another clinic. And it's been going on for years in medicine. You know, some surgeons say you have to have your leg amputated. Other surgeons say, no, we can do this vascular surgery to avoid an amputation. You know, it just depends on experience. It depends on mindset. It depends on so many factors. And we live in an age now more than ever where there's been more choice than there was 50 years ago. And, you know, the experience levels of clinicians are really wide and varied. So, yeah, I don't want to go on too much about criticizing a colleague, because that's not what I'm here for. I would just say it's not really a criticism. It's just like, okay, that's what they can do. Let's see what someone else can do, and listen to their story, and and if it was a dentist with my kind of background and training, we would definitely widen the jaw first.
Yeah.
And I actually would say, did you get an opinion from an orthodontist? Most orthodontists just do brace work. So they tend to be more highly skilled. I'm not saying they always will be, but they tend to be more highly skilled because that's all they do. And they will know tricks and ideas to avoid this reduction of enamel. And one of them is sometimes you just, for a short while, wear a wire. or you wear a wire on the inside of your teeth to get the kind of width development that we're looking for, so that we're not having to touch any enamel on your teeth. So some people do combination therapy because they don't really want to wear wires. So some people will wear Invisalign for as much as they can, and they finish the treatment with a wire. Some people just wear a wire initially, just very short term, 3 months, very quickly, just to get that stretch. They get that outward movement, maybe 6 months, if not 3 months. And the magical product, which is a bit of a biological challenge, but because it's only in the mouth for a short period of time, we tend to get away with, and it's titanium wire, but it has a bit of nickel in it. And most people know that nickel's not that great in earrings, in particular, and in the sort of Indian silver world, a lot of jewelry can create a skin irritation. But in dentistry, we're not seeing a lot of skin irritation or gum irritation with nickel titanium wire. But it's mainly the titanium that, because titanium is such an elastic metal, not only are the teeth being stretched and moved, but the bone is moving with the teeth. So it's called osteogenic distraction, where bone will grow with the forces because they're super light forces, and they work within the blood flow, blood pressure of the vessels, so that the forces are not crushing the blood vessels. So if you move teeth really quickly and aggressively, you can constrict the blood vessels and cause gum, bone, and ligament cells to actually die off from hypoxia or lack of oxygen. So you really only want elastic forces, and that's where Invisalign has come in, because it's all computer generated forces put into the plastics. So it is very clever. A lot of artificial intelligence now is doing all the calculations. So a lot of the thinking is being, up to a point, taken away from the dentist. A bit like piloting. You learn to be a pilot, and then you fly a 747 and don't have to do much other than take off and landing. So with Invisalign, those forces are impregnated into the plastic to make sure that it's elastic, but they're not strong enough to do more than, say, 2 millimeters of arch development. So you do sometimes need that wire, and you can hide it. You can put the wire on the inside. It just gets more expensive. This is what puts a lot of people off. Like you wanted this quick idea, just stick on some Invisalign for a few months and get this magic answer, and you hit a roadblock that was, you're going to have to take some enamel off. Other people, the roadblock might be, well, it's going to take too long, and I'm going to have to pay for a wire as well. I didn't want any wires in the first place. And then you get the holistic community saying, well, I don't want nickel in my mouth. And then you say, well, then we can't do that wire, because for some weird reason, we need the nickel with the titanium to create this kind of super elastic metal, with this super elastic wire. So let's get back to the gold standard. What I want your audience to really take away from today is, can we do this change work just with whitening? And if the answer is no, then we need to align the teeth. And wouldn't it be nice if we could actually see what that alignment looked like before we started? So there is digital smile design software. There are even apps on your phones that you can just download, put a photograph of your smile onto that software, and you will get, up to a point, maybe an unrealistic end result, because what's the right way of putting it, is like Photoshop, right? So it's but it's a really good idea. It gives you an idea of, it's a really good insight. That's what I'm trying to say, is it gives you an idea of what that color, that shape, and that length can look like in your mouth. And then if it's too white, you can change the color. If it's too long, you can shorten. If they're too wide, you can narrowify the teeth. So you can kind of do a lot of planning, and ideally with someone who knows what they're doing. You can pay consultants online to do that for you. So you're getting insight. No different to, I like to use metaphors. Most people have designed a bathroom or a kitchen at some kind of store where they've used software, CAD/CAM systems, and they've designed your kitchen or bathroom, and they give you an idea of what it really does look like. And it's really helpful before taking the plunge. So that would be my first real kind of, what's the word for it? Kind of mandatory recommendation, is get a good insight into not only what it looks like outside the mouth, but inside your mouth. That sound fair? It seems common sense, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
And if a dentist isn't offering that, and they're just saying, no, I don't do that, that tells me something. That tells me that they're either inexperienced, or they're too old school, or whatever, and so they can't offer what you're asking for. So that'd be the first thing. That'd be like, please show me what I can look like before I even have my mouth touched by anything, whether that's a brace or a drill. or even up to a point of whitening product, I don't think you need to do. Just get your teeth whitened. We always say to our patients, just whiten your teeth and then you'll know if you need more. And some people, especially ladies, I mean, there'll be a few guys that will be up for this, but there are tricks of the trade with skin coloring. So bright red lipstick, for example, can make your teeth look whiter, even if you haven't whitened them. It will make them look whiter. So you can see why that's probably more of a female idea, but there's plenty of guys that will happily wear red lipstick. So I'm not pro or anti that. It's good luck to whatever you want to do. So whitening your teeth, where are we at? So we talked about alignments, then whitening, and then once we've got to the point, so say we've done the smile design, and the smile design software should only work with the morphology of your teeth. So this is the orthodontic aspect, the alignment aspect. There is software that will then veneer them, whether that's in composite or porcelain is irrelevant. It's like it's a photoshopping of the shape and length of the teeth. That's different to what you went to the table with. So the initial software should only be maneuvering and aligning your current dental situation. And then you can then critique whether your own teeth have the right balance when they're aligned. And what I mean by balance is if two front teeth are way too long and a bit rabbit-like, you may then have to sort of say, well, I like the alignment, but my two front teeth, they were, a bit retroclined before. And when you upright retroclined teeth, they appear to look longer. And if they look rabbity and it doesn't tick a box, then you may have to then kind of swallow hard and say, well, I'm prepared to accept a little bit of tip reduction of those two long teeth. So we're not talking necessarily all the teeth, but to get an ideal smile improvement, can we do that by just removing some enamel? With traditional orthodontics, especially if you're young enough, but it can be done in adults, you can intrude those teeth. So you can push them back into the bone. It just takes more time and is more unpredictable the older you are when you're doing that treatment. It's really easy as a 11, 12-year-old, much more challenging as a 40-year-old with solid bone. But it's not impossible, just adds on another 6 months to a year to your treatment. So a lot of people might say, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? Just I'm going to rub down a little bit off the tips of my teeth to give me what I want. That'll be a soul searching question like your one was when you were told you needed polishing between the teeth.
Yeah.
A lot of people wear down the tips of their front teeth and rarely have problems. A lot of people have chips on their front teeth from sports injuries and rarely have problems if they're just like 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter max. There's a lot of enamel on the tips of front teeth. There isn't a lot of enamel between the teeth, which is why I'd be equally nervous of taking too much off in between the teeth. Yeah. So that's length. So when they're aligned, are some too long? But what about if some are too short, or if all of them are too short, and you're wanting what's called a smile lift or a lengthening of the teeth? And that's where the software can then show you what you can have, whether that's in composite or white filling material or porcelain. And we're going to go into that in just a moment, the differences and why I would recommend using composite first, and why the trend for composite is really overtaking the original trend in the 80s of porcelain. So the porcelain market was really strong in the 80s. That's when it really kicked off and has been strong for the last since the 80s, 90s, new millennium, and maybe the first 10 years of new millennium. But over the last decade, composite has started to take over. And a metaphor I love using is the nail industry back in the day, and still quite popular, but not as popular as before, were acrylic nails, the really long nails, which are made out of acrylic. And now there's a movement towards more stick-on products called gel or gel nails. And to me, gel is like composite and acrylic nails is like porcelain. And you can thankfully make longer teeth with composite. It's a lot harder with gel. So a lot of people have to have like an acrylic nail trimmed a bit and then painted in gel nail to get that kind of strength. Thankfully, composite generally is really, really strong. And the beauty of composite over porcelain is fundamentally that you can add layers to it. So if it does chip a little bit or wear down a little bit, you can easily add another layer. And that's true with teeth, true with nails. And that's why the gel nail industry, I feel, is getting so popular, because what would happen with acrylic nails, and can happen still, is one will come off. So you have 10 put on, one comes off and you've got to go back to the nail bar or back to your bedroom to kind of sort it out. Yeah. If a veneer comes off your tooth, you really are quite scuppered. And I had the privilege, because our dental practice is very near the training ground at Chelsea Football Club. Nearly 20 odd years ago, I was regularly looking after the Chelsea footballers for either screening before the season started, or often emergency appointments when their veneers were popping off because they got an elbow in the face or a football in the face. And a lot of them were just scratching their head saying, I wish I hadn't had this done. And don't forget, a lot of the ones I'm thinking of right now were in their 30s. They probably had these veneers, these porcelain veneers, put on in their mid-20s at the height of their kind of fame, and maybe had a lot of pressure doing TV interviews, etc. And maybe kind of the agents kind of pushing for an improved modern smile kind of attitude. And they all regretted it. They all said, it's a right pain in the arse. It keeps coming off, etc., etc. And some of them even asked me to change the veneers to crowns, because crowns are like a full thimble or full wrap around of the teeth, whereas a veneer is literally just a thin layer bonded on the side, unless you get the unfortunate turkey teeth where everything's pretty much cut at the front and sometimes at the back as well.
Yeah.
So the problem with porcelain is if it chips or comes off, you usually have to start again or get an appointment to get it glued back on, and it never glues on as well as the very first time. It just gets less and less sticky, or the adhesion is harder to maintain and obtain as the products keep debonding. So often we end up starting again, and it gets expensive. It gets a real nuisance, because you know what's going to happen. It happens when it's really inconvenient. That's just Murphy's Law. It tends to happen on Christmas Day, before a training football training just before a big match. So I was even called out just before, I think it was a Chelsea Liverpool match over Boxing Day, and I think 2 days before I got the phone call, and I did an emergency call out. It got me 4 tickets to the Chelsea Liverpool game, but I'm not a Chelsea or Liverpool fan, but I still had a bit of fun that day. But this shows you that if you start doing things that are pretty irreversible, you can bet your bottom dollar Murphy will turn up. Poor old Murphy, he gets around a lot, but Murphy's Law is inconvenient things happen at really the most inconvenient time. So we want to try and avoid that, and that's the message I'm trying to. Hopefully people are getting it now, that how can we avoid irreversible dentistry? And that's where I'm now going to talk about composite, because even if you really wanted porcelain one day, why not have a really good trial run for many years with composite until maybe they start to wear out, or until you feel like you just want to go to that next super duper Hollywood level, because you can get very close, if not bang on Hollywood style dentistry with composite, but porcelain has more shine and longevity and much lower maintenance, because it's all cooked in an oven. It's all glazed in ovens like all porcelain does. Whereas composite, whilst it's mostly quartz, does get bound together by resin, which is basically a glue, and that glue does kind of weather over time. So even when you go for your checkups, most composites, whether they're back teeth fillings or front teeth veneers, need a luster polish, usually with a diamond polish paste, and we can get that luster back up again. And that's no different really to cleaning your windows when they've got a bit scaled up. You just give them a shine, or your bodywork of your car, just give it a good shine up. So it has that more higher maintenance, and you've gone in with that treatment and that smile transformation in hopefully a totally reversible format. Because I'm going to be strong here. I'm going to be strong here. Yeah, I'm going to be strong here again to say, don't get any enamel removed to get that end result if you can, and then listen to why you can't if you get told that's the only way to do it is to remove enamel. Because if you have your teeth already aligned, or you get them aligned, then you shouldn't need any enamel removed. You're going to say something. Sorry, I'm butting in.
I was going to say, so you can actually fully reverse composite veneers.
You can fully reverse porcelain veneers as well if you have what's called zero prep veneers. And that is literally porcelain or composite is bonded onto the teeth without any reduction, removal of any enamel. The only downside of that with porcelain in particular is that porcelain has to be a certain thickness, and they can look a little bit thick, but if they're well designed and you have the right situation, so we call that case selection, there will be some people who are just jammy. They can have it done all with just adding on to the teeth. Maybe they were just slightly retro positioned in the first place, or just it just suits that face, that they can literally have them laminated without anything done to the teeth. So then if you take them off, or you just feel like they need to come off and you want to start afresh, there will be negligible enamel damage from taking them off if it's done skillfully. It's easier to take off composite ones, because that's a bit like, I'm trying to think of some analogies here that everyone would understand. But composite being like resin, you can just layer by layer just rub down with abrasives that don't actually rub enamel, but they will rub the resin off. So when you get to the enamel, you won't scratch it. Whereas porcelain, you will either have to chip them off or cut them off, and if you're not careful or you're unlucky, you might go through too deep and then damage the enamel. So there's less likelihood of enamel damage from composite. That said, a little word of warning: you will get told by most composite veneer dentists that they have to make a little gap between the teeth, and so it's a bit like what you were told, this intraproximal reduction, because the composite veneers are all made at once from a template, and it's all kind of like glued over the teeth. And you need a bit of control of the gaps so that you have flossable gaps and flossable contacts. So they do say that they need to create a very small amount, maybe like what you were told, 0.5 on each side. So it's like a millimeter gap. So without the veneers, you will end up having a line that everyone can see, like a millimeter gap. But you shouldn't have anything removed from the outside surfaces of your teeth if you're having them aligned first. Clearly, every case is dependent on specific set of circumstances, the dentist's opinions, the patient's opinions, and the compromises are often having to be made. But I'm really talking about how can we reduce that compromise either to zero or to less than 10%. So there really is no real long-term lasting damage. So it's a bit like the dentist that told you with your Invisalign treatment, it's not going to damage your teeth. Even a millimeter gap between the teeth, whilst that would look horrendous without the veneers on, when the veneers are on, that will get covered up and it gets inserted onto the teeth more effortlessly and more practically. So the simple answer, replying to you, is yes, there shouldn't be any removal on the outside surface or even ideally the length of your teeth, but there will have to be a slight removal for most cases in between the teeth. So you've got to do some soul searching. It's not all straightforward. The only way to avoid it all is to accept yourself as you are, love yourself as you are, and maybe just whiten the teeth if you haven't been blessed with the best teeth. And that's if you don't want to go through orthodontics. I'll be the first person to say orthodontics every time. That sound fair?
Yeah. I was going to ask, because this is the problem with dentistry, is everything you do comes with some sort of a risk. Where do we stand with the chemical composition between porcelain and composite bonding in terms of toxicity? Because this is something that I do worry a bit about. I've got quite a lot of friends that have had composite bonding, and one of the things that I hate about, I've only got a few fillings, but I can't stand the thought that I have them in my mouth, because there's probably BPAs in there, or there's all sorts of, chemicals that are going to be constantly now in my mouth, like really low level, but it's like a low level of constant exposure to toxins.
Yeah,
And obviously the more you get, the more it's a thing.
Yeah. Again, there are rabbit holes within rabbit holes, and there are different sensitivity levels of people in society. And some people say, well, if you're sensitive, maybe you should just detoxify your body and get less sensitive before you have any kind of therapy or even a perfume sprayed on your body, you know what I mean, or an air freshener in your house. So there are two lines of thoughts. Get yourself stronger so you can cope with toxicity, or just be avoidant of all the kind of toxic products. And a lot of very hypersensitive people have to do probably both until they're strong enough and able enough to tolerate whatever. And the problem with dentistry is it's sold as if it's health food, and there are perils in old-fashioned dentistry with good old mercury fillings, which we've talked about, metals in the mouth, the risks of galvanic kind of electrical kind of issues, having metals in the mouth. And then a lot of these products that are the newer ones, what are their risks? Thankfully, a lot of the BPA has been removed from most of the products. I wouldn't say all of them, but there's a huge movement, especially thanks to the Swiss and the Germans, who are much more biologically minded than certainly this part of Europe. And they have created products which are BPA free.
Yeah.
And I think it also comes down to the public. When the public asks for it, companies change. So most change happens when people say they've had enough of the old way and they want a new way. That's kind of happening in the world right now, which is exciting. So because it's in the mouth 24/7, we often say whatever your dentistry is, it's like a sweet, it's like a lozenge. You're just sucking on it 24/7. So are there risks? I'll be bold enough to say, whilst porcelain has more risks in terms of needing more damage done to the teeth or irreversible treatment to the teeth, it's baked in an oven. That's like keeping in your mouth a teacup or a saucer. It's pretty inert, isn't it? It's been baked in an oven, it's been glazed, and not a lot is going to dissolve out of that. Whereas a resin, as I said before, over 90%, 95% is quartz crystal. I'll happily keep a piece of quartz crystal in my mouth 24/7. It's just that 5%, maybe more than 5% of resin, is that going to slowly dissolve like your white fillings? All I can say is super sensitive people have struggled with white filling dentistry. The majority of society, and I've got 30 years of evidence of people with white fillings who still have them. They may be a little yellower, they've absorbed some stain, and we just polish them up sometimes. Sometimes we'll actually add a new layer over the top just to kind of refresh it. They're still healthy. They don't seem to have the weird and wonderful kind of health side effects that chemical sensitivity could be causing. But that's like dentists saying they've got people with mercury fillings, and they're fine. So it's really hard with empirical evidence to say whether something's good, healthy or not. But in cytotoxic studies, white filling material is cytotoxic. But that's under the microscope, and what's the right way of putting it? Under the microscope of the rabbit hole of cytotoxicity. Most things are significantly cytotoxic, unless it's real pure food. So I think we have to understand that dentistry is a compromise, and that's why I'm on, because a lot of what we're talking about today is choice. It's not really a choice if you have your face smashed in from a road accident or a punch up, or you didn't wear your mouth guard in some kind of sport when you should have done, got a cricket ball in your face. These are the different kind of situations. We're talking really about the people who are, one, very young, in their 20s, maybe 30s, who are thinking about having this kind of dentistry just on a cosmetic level. They've actually got beautiful, healthy teeth. And often I've had people come in and I'm saying, why are you having this done? I love your teeth. You look natural. And this is the next big subject I'm really into. And that's the natural smile versus the fake smile, or the authentic smile versus the fake smile. It's just inauthentic smile.
Yeah.
That's got to be worth its weight in gold when you wake up. And there are so many people who wake up and go, I wish I hadn't had it done. And they hate it, they regret it. That's like tattoos, isn't it? It's like I've got a few tattoos, some cheeky, some not so cheeky, and I don't regret any of them, thankfully. But I don't have them on my face. I don't have them even on my arm, where anyone and everyone can see them. I still can cover mine up. You can't cover up your dentistry pretty much. Maybe the back tooth, but your smile, your front teeth. If you've done fake work, because it all is fake work at the end of the day, no matter how well it's done. If you've had fake work done and you don't like it later in life, it's really hard to change. It's hard to undo and unravel. So let's try and find ways to do it reversibly, sensibly, with minimal compromise. And that's the message today, is this needs intelligence. It's not just about, I'm just going to go to another country because it's cheaper. If that's your only reason for thinking, then you're going to get into trouble. You need to do a lot more research. Please, that's the message. Do your research, do your homework, get second opinions. I offer online second opinions. Many dentists offer online second opinions. Send me your photos, send me your x-rays, and you'll get a second opinion. And when it's not chair side, those second opinions can either be very low priced or moderately priced if it's very time consuming, because you're not chewing up chair side time. The most expensive cost in dentistry is chair side time. I'm not really convinced people understand what it costs to run a dental clinic. The staffing, the facilities, the modern equipment. Then you've got your standard business running costs that every business has, your electricity, etc., etc.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal. In the UK, most dental practices have to to break even earn a minimum of £200 an hour, and the swanky practice can be £300-400 an hour. That's a lot of money when you're just talking to someone. So it gets like solicitors if you're not careful. Most solicitors will charge between £200 and £500 an hour for a chat. Well, maybe that's what's got to happen in dentistry for us to make better decisions. We're getting legal advice or quality dental advice, but if it's done online, then those fees can be much, much less.
Yeah. Okay. I think for me, if I was like in my 50s and my teeth were declining, I'd probably, would I consider the turkey teeth? Maybe I would, but I think it's a travesty when people are, in their 20s, as you said, and they haven't thought about these things. And also, I think toxicity level you could probably deal with more when you're younger, but then, as you say, how many decades are you going to have that exposure?
I know.
If you're 50 odd and you think, do you know what, fuck it, I'm done with worrying about the teeth and just get it done. You probably got another 10 years before you stop caring anyway. So that's kind of the way. Maybe that's naive, but that's the way I've looked at it. So
it does depend. I mean, you're talking to a 60-year-old. That a lot of people say I don't look anywhere near 60. So it depends on how you age, and would I even have it done now? Simply put, no. I had braces. Braces about 10 years ago. I just expanded my jaw, and I've whitened occasionally. The whitening keeps coming back, so I'm not that really visually obsessed. But once in a while, I'll spruce them up for a photo shoot, like a birthday party or something like that. So everyone's different. Everyone thinks differently. But I wouldn't put age as young as what you're saying, especially if they're not damaged. If they're still healthy-looking teeth, you'd be amazed what whitening can do. If they're chips and worn.
Yeah, I think it'll be a case of that. Like I know a few people, some family who, in their later years, their teeth are battered, and then I just go, I don't care anymore. But I think if you listen to the advice in a lot of our conversations, I'm very confident that you will prolong these things into your older years. I mean, your teeth are great for your age. If you stood up against most people, if you stood up against 50 people, I think you'd be in the top 1% there easily.
For a 60-year-old, I think for a 60-year-old, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. But a lot of people just live their lives drinking cans of Coke and drinking and not caring, and they don't know what you know. And the decline is real.
This is why I'm on the airwaves these days and online, is because dentistry, whilst it's a growing kind of cosmetic world and service, the actual decline of teeth is generally perceived as very reversible. It's like gum disease and tooth decay, two of the most common diseases, are also the most reversible diseases if you get the right guidance and the right supervision. It's not all about doing it on YouTube. It's about kind of getting a coach to kind of monitor you, but like any kind of health coach, whether it's an osteopath or even a sports coach, you're getting regular reviews. So you're being checked on what you've been guided on, and are you doing it? And are you doing it correctly? And is it working? And if it's not working, what else can we do to make sure it works? And that's what I want to maybe finish on, is that anything glued on the mouth, in the mouth, any kind of dentistry that you've had, you need to level up and look after it, because it is a foreign body. It is a foreign being inside our mouth. It will have, even if it looks like it fits amazingly, there will be microscopic edges, U-bends as I like to call them, like toilet U-bends, but on a microscopic level, where the anaerobes, or the bad bugs, shall we call them, the less friendly bacteria and microorganisms, they will thrive in that unless you are finding a way to remove that biofilm on a potent level. And I'm a big fan of using foods to do that. So you're chewing carrots and apples, what animals used to do to clean their teeth, especially the carnivores, the dogs, they would chew on bones to clean their teeth. And we've all seen this kind of increase in tooth decay and gum disease in pets, especially dogs and cats, because they're not really given the food anymore that they used to have, one, to nourish themselves, but two, to clean their teeth. So if we're cleaning our veneers, our crowns, our dentistry with fibrous foods, that's great. But if we're not, or if we can add to that specialized dental care products that every hygienist will be promoting, and as a more holistic kind of character in dentistry, I would look at things that are a lot more biological for your mouth and a lot more biological for our environment. So I'm a big fan of water flossing, which is basically a miniature jet washer, and you jet wash with just water. Or I've brought into the UK an ozone jet washer, where in the tank, that water, as it squirts through the actual tubes, will be immediately converted into ozone. So you're then jet washing with extra oxygen. And we all know that disease is really created by anaerobe or reduced oxygen levels. So when we're flushing the mouth with more oxygen, that's got to be a good thing. And then there's the light therapy we talked about before. So you can have electric toothbrushes that have LED lighting that is the right wavelength for stimulating blood flow to the gums. So you're improving your oral health with light therapy, with ozone, and then massage. And that can be massage with the toothbrush bristles. There are either standard manual ones, then there's the electric motorized ones, and then there are the sonar ones or the ultrasound ones. So there's many different products out in the marketplace. Again, I've written loads of blogs on that on my website. So people feel free to get the free insight on that on those blogs on my website. And then there's the traditional stuff, the flosses and the incidental brushes. Whatever you use, you've got to use something. It's not going to happen just with a manual with just a quick scrub morning and evening. That might be good enough for your teeth, and it probably isn't in this toxic age where a lot of people are mouth breathing, as we talked about. A lot of people have acidic foods and drinks. A lot of people are not producing enough saliva as it is because they're dehydrated or they have medications that make their mouth dry. So please do a lot of what I'm guiding with the guidance of a dental health specialist or therapist, dentist, hygienist, oral health educator. There are so many different kind of people in dentistry that can give you that guidance. And if it's not face to face, then find it online too. With video, we're doing a podcast today without video, but we do most of them, don't we? On video, you can do so many consultings these days on Zoom and Teams and all these different online video portals. So that's what I want to say today, really. We could talk a bit about mewing. I don't know, you said you've done mewing for a while. Do you want to talk about mewing?
Well, just actually really quickly, so I had two questions before we
go for it.
Mewing. You mentioned about the bio film on the teeth. This is something I've been looking into quite a lot myself, actually. Yeah. There's something called is it a miswak? Which is like
miswak, yeah.
Miswak, yeah. Is that something you'd recommend, like as just something to kind of chew on to try and break up the biofilm?
Yeah, let's go back to our ancestors. What did our ancestors do? I don't think there was any ancestor getting nylon. Nylon wasn't invented. They may have found some kind of tree fiber to floss their teeth, but most ancient cultures would have used some kind of tree product, branch of a tree, and chewed on it. And they would have chosen trees that have magical antiseptic oils in them. So miswak, I'm not sure if miswak is neem. I think that's what it's. Miswak's an Arabian one, but there's the neem tree branch, which a lot of Asia will chew. There's miswak that you've mentioned. Then there are other essential oil barks that ancient cultures were either chewed or they would have put into teas and then used as an infusion, maybe as a mouthwash, or just they put in their foods to be antiseptic in their foods, and then maybe it then affected the biome of the mouth by just eating it as a spice, for want of a better word. And we've talked about cloves, haven't we, before? And the joy for me of sucking a clove like a peppermint, but then also chewing it when it's a bit more gelatinous. And then you're just oozing all that antiseptic oil into your mouth. If you have pain, it's great as an analgesic, but I'm just thinking as a preventative antiseptic. I think you can overdo it with all these products. So I think we've talked about that in the past privately, that if you put too much essential oil, too much good stuff into the mouth, you can still upset the apple cart somehow. I think it's because of the strength. These oils are so strong. So in diluted forms, they're pretty potently helping us. But if we overdo it, we can create so almost a positive imbalance that ultimately is still an imbalance. And then that ecosystem gets upset even by doing good things. A bit like exercise, isn't it? You can over-exercise.
Yeah, I did that myself, didn't I?
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to ask, just really quickly as well. I'm sure you've seen people that have gone and had their turkey teeth or these veneers or whatever. that maybe just carry on with the same lifestyle that caused the problem that's led them to, having like these surgical procedures. I would imagine that these people, yeah, you've got veneers now, so your teeth look great, but what's going on behind? Do you find that these people can be more prone to cavities, or can still get cavities at a high rate, which will then affect things, as a whole as well? Is that because you mentioned obviously there's more maintenance now, which we know, but maybe some people don't care about the maintenance side. So could these things actually cause more problems than they're, it's worth in
100%.
the end?
I'd be strong enough to say you have 100% more risk of whether you get it or not will depend on the ecosystem of your mouth. If you had poor habits in the past, smoking habits, mouth breathing habits, high sugar consumption habits, if you had those that cause dental problems in the first place and they don't improve, you've made it a million times more dangerous by putting foreign bodies on your teeth. Simple as that. You're highly likely to get more decay around all those edges. It's just feeding grounds for all those organisms. So the first thing that people have got to do is get that biome right, the oral biome. So they'll have to stop smoking for starters. If they're mouth breathing, they've got to have to stop that. They've got to look at why else have they got dry mouth? If they've got dry mouth, are they on drugs, medications, anti-anxiety medications, for example? Antidepressants give you a dry mouth. There's a whole myriad of things. So a really high quality holistic health study of that individual should be done before they even think about doing this kind of dentistry. But does that happen? It happens in 0.1% of dental practices to 0.1% of population, because they're the ones that are switched on. The majority are clueless. That's why we're on the airwaves, sir.
Yeah, this is why you have to look at everything holistically first. Do you find that some of these things like composite bonding and things, can that upset the oral microbiome as well?
That's a really good question. Really good question. There are ingredients that can do that for sure. So people in the past, especially the old-fashioned dentistry, that have like a gold tooth, either wrapped over a mercury filling that's full of silver, zinc, and copper and mercury, and that would create then a galvanic system or a battery, and that will then be constantly electrically emitting a frequency that one would be irritating the nervous system of the body, but also would be then electrolyzing or electroplating, taking out the metal elements through electrolysis into our body, and then basically we'll be dissolving at a faster rate. So we'll be getting into our body systems. That's not rocket science. That's standard electrical kind of chemistry. The big debate is how badly is that really affecting us as a human being. That's always going to be the hard one to prove, but every scientist will agree that electrogalvanism will occur if there's gold touching a mercury filling. The innocuous kind of products in the modern dental game, like zirconia, which is it's man-made diamond ground into a tooth shape, that is very innocuous. But there are glues that they glue these products on, which are resin based, and if they're BPA free, then hopefully that there's minimal risk with that. If they're BPA rich, then you've got BPAs constantly floating in the mouth. Will that affect the biome? Just don't know. There are fluorides in a lot of these products. Will that affect the biome of the mouth? I don't know, but there's a possibility. I think the whole studying of the oral biome, I mean, we haven't really fully studied the gut biome, and the oral biome is the next one that's is really being looked at like a rabbit hole. And I think we talked about there's also the intracellular one. There's a third one, which is the biome of the cell. Well, every cell in our body has an ecosystem. So there are three key ones: the gut, and then the mouth, and then probably the most important is the cellular one. But there are three kind of very potent biomes that if we have disruptors, so everyone's heard of hormone disruptors. What about biome disruptors? And many foods that we're eating are biome disruptors, without a doubt. The chemicals in people's foods, you have to look at processed foods on the back of packaging. Is that so? I would say probably our food and drink, and then our environment is probably more toxic than hopefully our dentistry. But the dentistry could be, and we might find out in years to come that some of these products had a huge effect on our microbiome. So I can't really answer that as in a black and white way, but I think we've got to be cautious. And the very sensitive patients that I have who are very holistically minded, we do kinesiological tests, because there are tests you can do that are blood test related. So if we're really worried about someone, and it's called a chemical sensitivity test or reactivity test, we'll send blood samples to these specialist test centres. But a very quick, easy one is you give the product to a patient to hold, and then you do a kinesiology test, which is just a muscle test to see if someone feels strong or weak when they're holding it.
Yeah.
Some people think it's woo-woo, other people think it's the best test you can do. So it just depends on your level of awareness and understanding of what applied kinesiology is.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I've got to say, in all of the stuff that I've looked into with health and, you know, mainly dentistry, I think this microbiome thing, like you said, oral, gut, and cellular, I think this is absolutely key to a lot of this, to be honest. So things like good probiotics. Me and you, I think we use the same toothpaste, the Gutology one, which obviously with probiotics, but just things like and this is why I think there's so many positives with like fermented foods as well, is getting in all of those. Like, I don't know how many lactobacilluses there are, but you know, these good enzymes, there's so many of them, and I feel like if you're getting the right vitamins and minerals in your body, then there's not a lot of room for toxins to store. So they normally would flush through, because a lot of these minerals and minerals will compete with these toxins and vice versa. And then once you've got, I think, a good colony of good bacteria throughout the body, it's very hard for the bad to thrive. So
exactly,
it's just about that balance thing. And this is what I'm very cautious of with a lot of things now, is what am I putting in my body that, you know, essentially gives me energy and gives me good positive bacteria, and what am I putting in that almost robs from me and puts in the bad, or you know, takes my energy as well. So I think that's a big thing. And as we said at the beginning, all the way through really this conversation, is people are so quick to make these decisions on how you look beauty wise, but you're not really looking at the damage that's done on a cellular, you know, or a microbiome or bacterial level, which can then just wreak absolute havoc over the next however many years. And these things are irreversible. So I think that's, you know, really is the key takeaway, I think, of this conversation.
100%. And on a spiritual level, anyone that's got half an eye open, let alone fully awake, will have heard the term the Great Awakening. This term is really about enhancing our awareness as humanity. We are waking up to who we really are and our real potential, and really waking up to what's really holding us back. And it's not just dentistry, is it? It's just everything from our foods, from our water supplies, our drinks, our habits, etc. So we're all, as a collective, going through a huge awakening and awareness enhancement of all the things that are good for us, not so good for us. And then that gives us then choices to make, or maybe better choices, but also make changes in our own lives, but also amongst our communities, to improve the chances of us surviving as a species, and not only surviving but thriving. So dentistry is only one small part of it, but it is very, very potent, because it's the mouth, and that's the portal, it's the gateway to the whole body. You know, some might say it's through the nose as well with the breathing, but holistic dentistry also covers that with, you know, how we breathe, and how our heads and postures lie, and how our muscles function. So it's huge. Dentistry is huge, and I do feel in the next decade or so, people will start to really realize the importance of dental care, prevention, and then the dentistry that they have. And so that they hopefully only have it done once. If you need dentistry, just get the best. Even if you have to beg, steal, and borrow, or if you even just have to wait until you can afford it, because most dentistry doesn't have to be bought there and then. You can do simple things just to calm symptoms down until you've got the time, the energy, and the finances to fund the best quality dentistry that you can get, even if you have to go to another country. Some people even go to South Africa, where dentistry is no doubt as good as, and some will say better than, the UK dentistry. It's the same price when you add on the kind of flight and the holiday that you get. So some people are kind of choosing a better form of ecotourism by going to countries like South Africa, where you get a holiday as well. I'm still nervous of recommending certain countries that we've talked about today, unless you really know that dental practice, know that dentist, and you really know the quality of care that you're getting. But it's a minefield for sure.